गंगे, हर हर गंगे, हर हर गंगे।
गंगे माँ,
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 गंगे माँ, गंगे माँ, गंगे माँ, गंगे माँ,
गंगे माँ, सर्वेश्वर भगवान की जय, गंगा मैया की जय, भारत माता की जय, धरती माता की जय, हर हर महादेव। कर्पूर गौरम करुणावतारं संसार सारं भुजगेन्द्रहारं सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे, सदा वसन्तं हृदयारविन्दे, भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि, भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि, भवं भवानी सहितं नमामि।
ओम जय गंगे माता मैया, जय गंगे माता, जो नर तुमको ध्याता, जो नर मैया जी को ध्याता, मनवांछित फल पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। चंद्र सी ज्योत तुम्हारी, जल निर्मल आता, मैया जल निर्मल आता, शरण पड़े जो तेरे, शरण पड़े जो तेरे, सो नर तर जाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। एक ही बार जो तेरी शरणागति आता, मैया शरणागति आता, यम के त्रास मिटा कर, यम के कष्ट मिटा कर, परम गति पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। मंगलकारिणी मैया, तू है सुखदाता, मैया तू है सुखदाता, तेरी गोद में आकर, तेरी शरण में आकर, मन शांति पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता। भजन नित गाता,
मैया प्रेम सहित गाता, दास वही असहज में, भक्त वही असहज में, मुक्ति को पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता, ओम जय गंगे माता, मैया जय गंगे माता, जो नर तुमको ध्याता, जो नर मैया जी को ध्याता, मन वांछित फल पाता। ओम जय गंगे माता, जय गंगे माता, जय गंगे माता। त्वमेव माता च पिता त्वमेव, त्वमेव बन्धुश्च सखा त्वमेव, त्वमेव विद्या द्रविणं त्वमेव, त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित्
दुःखभाग् भवेत्।
ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। जय जय राधारमण, हरि बोल हरि बोल, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल।
जय राधारमण हरि बोल
हरि बोल, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय जय राधारमण, जय राधारमण, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय जय राधारमण, जय जय राधारमण, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल हरि बोल, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय राधारमण हरि बोल हरि बोल, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय जय राधारमण,
जय जय राधारमण,
जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय जय हरि बोल। जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल हरि बोल, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। जय राधारमण हरि बोल हरि बोल, जय जय राधारमण, जय जय राधारमण, जय जय राधारमण हरि बोल। पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.
He said, what about if someone is attracted to drugs? We actually are not primed biologically to be attracted to drugs in that way. So for example, we see a sunset. Love it. Smell something beautiful. Love it. Taste something wonderful. Love it. The pleasure that we get from taking drugs reacts in a different way. Definitely is still the pleasure part of the brain usually. But really what's happening is it's numbing us from our present existence. So whatever drugs we use, really what they're doing is they're pulling me out of the present moment. I'm stressed, I'm depressed, I'm bored, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed. Therefore, I'm going to get drunk, take drugs, whatever. The joy that I get is not so much the joy of the drug as the joy of no longer having that experience of being in that state of my life. The dilemma, of course, is when I wake up the next morning or the drug wears off, I'm back exactly where I was. So for someone who's attracted to drinking and taking drugs like that, really what we're attracted to is being distracted from our life, being numbed from our life, which is very different. One is a moving towards something, a rainbow. The smell of rain on the earth. The other is actually pushing something away. I'm pushing away my life, my experience of my life through using these drugs. And for that, of course, the goal is to stop. But with stopping, the goal is to say, well, what is it I'm trying to push away? What is it about my life that is so difficult for me to sit with? And this is why we meditate. We learn to sit with it. And what you find is the more you're able to sit with something, the less it actually hurts us. You know, all of the stuff inside of us has what I call the Wizard of Oz complex, which is, do you know the story of the Wizard of Oz? Okay. So, without going into the whole very famous children's mostly story, classic story, but the bottom line is you've got this wizard who is the all-powerful being of this land. But nobody actually ever sees the wizard. The wizard stays behind a curtain. But they see a reflection of the wizard, and he's huge. He's got this loud voice, and everybody's afraid of the wizard, and everybody... Well, at the end of the story, the curtain gets pulled back, and what we see is that the wizard is actually this tiny little man with a projector. Of course, not nearly so terrifying. And that's actually the truth with a lot of the stuff in most of us. The stuff in our lives that we run from, that we turn to alcohol and drugs or gambling or promiscuity or whatever our thing may, or food, whatever our thing may be. We're running from something that has projected itself as though it were very, very big and very dark, and it's gonna consume us. But the truth is, if I sit with it, it actually doesn't. But I have to have the courage to metaphorically pull back that curtain and look at it to discover that actually it's a tiny little thing. It's an instance in our life. It's a fear. It's a feeling. But it's projected itself over our consciousness in such a way That it's made us think we are that. That I am that thing that happened. I am that fear. I am that longing. I am that weakness. I am that desire. But if we actually look at it, we realize it's actually very small. And the more you sit with it, the more we create space for it. And that's ultimately the goal, is not how can I push things away, but how in my meditation, in my prayer, in my spiritual practice, can I create so much space in me that I don't need to push away a fear or a desire or a thing that happened, because there's enough space. It's not me or that. There's space for both. And slowly, 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 in the space that was created for it, it actually begins to dissipate automatically. But not through fighting it, not through pushing it away, through expanding our sense of self enough that actually creates the place for it to exist. So I don't need to run from it. I don't need to run into drugs to escape it. It's such a tragedy of our lives that, as he said, for the last 3 years, one instance of so many decades ago is intruding on my meditation, intruding on my life, keeping me from meditating and living. No other thought, no other problem, just this one instance. This happens, it happens so frequently to us that there's something from the past. It's like a thorn in our conscience, a thorn in our consciousness. Something that happened, some way that someone injured us, some way that someone betrayed us, something that happened. And it won't let us be in peace. And this is where the practice of forgiveness is so important. So many times we don't forgive because we think that forgiving somehow is like saying what happened is okay. That if I forgive you, it means it was okay for you to abuse me or harm me or cheat me or betray me or abandon me. And so of course we can't forgive. We try to move on. It's not like we're trying to hold a grudge. We try to move on. We try to get on with our lives. But we can't actually forgive it because in so many cases it was so objectively wrong that how can you forgive that? And the tragedy of this misunderstanding of forgiveness is something that ends up killing us. Forgiveness does not mean that what happened was okay. Forgiveness does not mean we are condoning abuse, betrayal, lying, cheating, abandonment, none of that. Forgiveness means one thing and one thing only, which is I deserve to be free. That's what forgiveness means. I forgive you because I deserve to be free. That's all. The fruit of your karma is yours to eat, not mine to give you. I cannot make apples grow on an apple tree, and I cannot bring you fruit of karma. there is a divine energy that does all of that. The energy of nature that makes apples spring on apple trees out of apple seeds. And the energy of the law of karma that brings the fruits, the repercussions, the ramifications, the effects of things that we do. But that's not up to us. Any more than making apples come out of an apple seed is up to us. We can't do it anyway. When that seed is planted, that's then in the divine hands. And so when someone does something in our lives, they're going to get the karmic ramifications of that. But we're not the karmic police. We don't need to stand there reminding God, by the way, just remember this guy or this gal, they've got something coming to them, because any more than the universe needs us to stand over an apple seed and say, hey, remember, apples. Apples. Oranges are over there. This one's apples. Well, the universe knows that. They never make mistakes. You never get watermelons coming out of an apple seed. That the universe says, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I got mixed up. I really thought this was watermelons for a second over here. So the point of that is, it's not our job, not our responsibility. We don't need to hold on. And so I forgive you means I deserve to be free. Whatever you did, knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, unconsciously, purposely, not purposely, that's a bed you've made that you now have to lie in. I need to take care of my bed, my life. And the way to do that is through forgiveness. And so if we can really forgive, and a lot of times what happens is things are from so long ago, we think we've gotten over it. And of course, the part of us that's on a spiritual path, the part of us that feels like mature adults, it's very difficult for us to handle the idea that we're still holding on to something from so long ago. And so we say, oh, I'm over that. I'm not still angry about that. But what you can be sure of is if 30 or 40 or 50 years later, something's coming into your meditation over and over and over again, there's some unfinished business there. And sometimes it's not forgiving others, sometimes it's forgiving ourselves. Sometimes it's something we did. Again, knowingly, unknowingly, purposely, not purposely. But something we did that keeps coming back. And we forgive ourselves the same way that we forgive others. Because we need to be free. That same compassion, that same loving kindness, that same oneness that we meditate upon and strive to feel for the world. Well, we have to feel it for ourselves as well. It's not have compassion for the world minus yourself. Feel loving kindness with the world minus yourself. The world is a family except you. It's not that. Have compassion for the world, including yourself. Experience loving kindness for the world, including yourself. Serve the world, including yourself. The world is a family, your family. All of these tenets are not minus you, they're including you. So whatever it is that's that thorn in your meditation, when it's negative, as you say, it's something negative. It keeps coming back. It means it's something to be looked at and then to be let go of. That's where we have the power of ritual. It's not the only way to let things go, but I have found personally that it's very, very powerful. Whether it's a fire ceremony, whether it's a prayer on the banks of Mother Ganga, there's something about natural elements. Whether you are Indian, whether you are Hindu, whether you're not, it doesn't matter. There's something about using natural elements in a ritual for ourselves that's very powerful. And what ends up happening, and this is the last point that I'll mention about this, is when something is coming up from a really long time ago, or when something is working in our unconscious, in our subconscious, and it's there, it's a pattern, it's there, it keeps coming. The dilemma is our conscious mind is the one saying, oh, you should go away. Oh, I shouldn't think about you. I'm not going to think about you anymore. But the conscious mind and the subconscious and unconscious mind are not actually interacting very much. And so the conscious mind is sort of shouting in its own metaphoric closed room. It thinks it's getting a message to the subconscious. It thinks it's getting a message to the unconscious. But it's actually not, because it's shouting only within the very padded walls of its own conscious mind. And the programming in the subconscious and unconscious are actually taking place in an entirely other area. On the other side of those padded walls, soundproof walls of our conscious mind. And this is where the dilemma comes up so frequently in life. Whether it's negative intrusions, whether it's addictions, whether it's emotional, psychological issues that we struggle with, depression that we have no rational understanding of why it's there. Everything is fine in my life. Why am I depressed? So many of these things arise because it's the conscious thinking mind that's doing the analysis. But the unconscious and subconscious minds that are where the pattern and the suffering or the negativity exists. And so you're literally shouting fruitlessly. And so the goal becomes, how can I actually impact my subconscious and unconscious mind? And there's a lot of ways, but ritual is a very powerful one. Hypnosis is one. Meditation is one. But unfortunately, just shouting from the conscious mind into your subconscious doesn't work very well. If you do it with enough repetition, enough times during every day for a long enough period, it will percolate down. And this is where the power of affirmation, for example, comes in. Some subconscious, unconscious level, we feel not enough. Okay. Well, yes, one way of using the conscious mind to get in is literally just bombarding myself constantly with, I am enough, I am full, I am whole. But it's not, once a week doesn't work. Once a day doesn't even work. If I'm going to use the conscious mind to get in like that, it literally has to be everywhere I look. But there are, fortunately, other ways into that unconscious, subconscious mind. And as I said, meditation, hypnosis, ritual. But it's things that get us into a state of mind out of just our conscious thinking mind. And so ritual has that power. if you're really connected to it. So if you've got something that you're looking to let go of, because suddenly out of the blue, there it is 50 years later, intruding upon your meditation. A yagna ceremony, a puja on the banks of Ganga. It's literally just a, Ganga, take this. I give this to you. I give this to the fire. And if you can actually experience, as the mantras are being chanted, that they literally go within you and alchemically transform the self on the inside, it's an incredible experience. This is what the Vedic mantras are. It's not about religion. It's about alchemy. The Indian scriptures on the power of sound. It's not about belief or faith or tenets or principles. It's about energetic transformation. Sound is energy. And so as the mantras are being chanted, there is actually a vibrational energy that transforms you. And so that's a very, very powerful way of letting go of it. Because chances are, there's very little about something that happened 50 years ago that's really going to be that useful for our life today. You know, usually I'm a big proponent psychologically of, okay, let's look at things and examine them. But unless there's something that really is going to benefit you in some way to look at it, which my instinct is no. It's helpful to know what it is. Oh yeah, I guess that hurt me more than I realized. Oh yeah, that's an element from my childhood. Okay, fine. That happened. There was a young boy. But not you. But you are not that young boy anymore. It's very, very common. And interestingly, as ironic as it seems, 7th standard, which is about 12, 13 years old, is actually old in terms of where so much of that stuff is. Most of the time you'll hear, it was I was 5, it was I was 7, it was I was 3. But the reason is, when we were young, our brains actually, neurologically, the wavelength at which we were functioning most of the time is actually a wavelength that is much more like that when we are in a state of hypnosis, when we are in altered states of consciousness. And so that which happens when we're young tends to have such a greater core impact on us than, say, that which happens when we're 23 or 33. Because it's impacting us on a completely different vibrational level of the psyche. And the dilemma then becomes, here we are 20, 30, 50 years later, trying to get at it from one level of consciousness, but it's existing on a different level of consciousness. And this is where you have to get into that level. So for you personally, what I would do is I would bring in a very conscious practice of forgiveness. Forgiveness of yourself, forgiveness of whoever else was present, whatever may have happened. A very conscious practice of, I forgive you. I forgive you. Even if it was just the universe, even if it was no one's actual fault. When we're young, we tend to be hurt and angry by things that don't necessarily hold up to the light of our adult, mature brain. And so, for example, our parents get divorced, let's say, or a parent dies. Well, as adults, we can look back on that and we can say, Mom was sick, she died. Dad was in a car accident, he died. Mom and dad hated each other, therefore they got divorced. Okay, and as adults, we're perfectly able to rationally look at that. But as kids, there's a felt sense of mom left me, dad left me. Now, obviously, they didn't try to die, but there's an anger that's there that as adults we don't even let ourselves see because it seems so irrational and it makes us feel so badly about ourselves. How can you be angry at your mom for getting sick and dying? How can you be angry at your dad for getting rear-ended in a car accident that killed him? Clearly it's not their fault. But on an unconscious level, there's anger. On an unconscious level, there's also guilt. Children feel responsible for everything that happens to them. And so most children whose parents got divorced when they were young, on some level, carry a sense of, if I were better, my parents wouldn't have gotten divorced. If I were better, dad wouldn't have gotten sick and died. But we don't deal with this as adults because the minute it starts to bubble up, our adult rational mind says, oh, don't be stupid. And then we berate ourselves and it goes right back down into our unconscious. But it's there. And it's there on a level that we're not accessing. And so it really helps to just look at it and to say, oh yeah, wow, okay. There was anger. There was guilt. But we don't need to go into psychoanalysis 50 years later to deal with it, hopefully. I mean, it's obviously better to go into psychoanalysis than to keep suffering from it. But my first suggestion would be, see if you can just let it go. Through ritual. Through getting yourself into a state of consciousness out of the thinking mind. It can be done in meditation, because meditation also takes you there. It can be done sitting in a yagna ceremony. It can be done through hypnosis. It can be done, there's a technique called Psych K that Bruce Lipton and several other teachers in this field talk about. There's a lot of different ways. There's nothing that's right or wrong or better or worse. But what's most important is to acknowledge that simply the conscious mind saying, okay, I'm done, usually isn't enough. The same way that the conscious mind saying, okay, I'm not going to drink anymore or use anymore, frequently isn't enough. And we need a whole nother element of internal and external allies in that. If what you were told was, you're stupid, and so what got in was, I'm stupid, or if what you were told was, you're bad, and what got in was, I'm bad, to give an affirmation that is the exact opposite of that. So you are brilliant. You are divine. Not just good. Why only good? You are divine. Yeah, right? So you are good implies you're adequate, you're fine, you're okay. You're not just fine or okay, you're divine. You are exactly how you should be, and the reason we know that is that's the way God made you. And God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't leave anyone, half-baked. And so how you are is exactly how you should be. So whatever the negative programming is, choose an affirmation that is the opposite of it. But here's what's important. It needs to be something that is about the core of who you are, not what you do. We don't want to be staying on the treadmill of feeling okay about ourselves based on what we do. And so if you believe that you are not enough, let's say, due to whatever programming you got, like we all got, we're not enough, you wouldn't want to substitute that by saying, you do so much, you help so many people, you are so successful. Because these are all things that actually are very transitory. You may be successful today, you may not be successful tomorrow. One crash of the stock market, one false malpractice suit, one accident, one who knows what it is. But that success could be gone in a moment. Today you're achieving so much. Who knows? God forbid you get in a car accident tomorrow. God forbid something happens. You no longer can get up and go to work. You don't want your sense of enoughness, fullness, completeness to be based on what you do. So choose anything that feels right, but as long as it's based on the core of who you are. And substitute that. But I would also work on forgiveness for whoever put that in your mind. Because we only believe things when we have faith and trust in the person who told us. Now, of course, yes, you get something in enough times, it becomes our truth. Until we look at it. But when I look at it, it becomes my truth if I'm unconscious. If I become conscious of the fact that I've been brainwashed to believe something, and I A, know that it's not true, and B, don't have faith in the people who told me, it's very easy to let go of that belief. It only retains its power over me when A, I keep it unconscious, or B, I believe on some level still in the omnipotence of those who told me. And this is why stuff we get from parents is so intense. Because even though as fully grown rational adults, we can look back on our parents and say, oh, they were doing their best, they were young, they were struggling, they were stressed, whatever. As kids, our parents are omnipotent. Our parents are God. Our parents are everything. And so whatever they tell us, it has to be true. But if you can bring in a practice of forgiveness for those who have put that in, it helps heal that. And then lastly, I would suggest also, give yourself a ritual. You're here on the banks of Ganga. Have a yagna ceremony. You said you've always been very religious, so this isn't going to be something that's, bringing in an aspect of religion that isn't yours. Let them do a yagna ceremony to free you from it. And with each offering into the yagna, just give that lie. We know it's a lie. Just give that. Give the experience of, I'm not enough. Give the experience of whatever it is that you've been told, give that into the fire. Let God take that. And let that then take some of those ashes and offer that to Ganga. You have to stop for a minute. Your conscious mind has wrapped itself around this and it's not letting you be free. And I can tell even just as you sit there and plan what you're going to say as soon as I stop what I'm saying. And in order for you to really allow yourself to be free, you have to let go of that grip you have on it. You have to let go of the place that it's occupying in your life. You're giving it space. You can decide in this moment not to give it that space anymore. But you have to let that happen. There's no brain surgery, sadly, that can be done where someone can go in and actually remove that. I mean, it would be fantastic if we could just walk into the neurosurgeons and say, for God's sakes, could you just take this not enoughness out of my brain? You know, could you just take that out? They can't. We have to do it. They say where the crack is, well, that's where the light goes through. So don't hate this thing. This is the one thing in your life. Imagine. In 13 and 53 years, 66 years, one thing that's happened you can't forgive. One thing that's happened that gives you a clue, a vision into the pain that so many other people suffer from in so many instances. Maybe this one thing is your way in. And so maybe that's why it's there. That if this weren't there, you'd have nothing else to look at. If this weren't there, there'd be no other crack in the psyche. If this weren't there, there'd be no reason for that meditation or that forgiveness practice or that yagna or that puja. Because of this, there's a crack. And through that crack, the light's going to come in. And so maybe that's the role it's playing. Which leads us to the question, of course, what light needs to get in that wasn't already getting in? What aspect of me is it that needs light in? And how can I allow that light in? By healing this, rather by allowing it to stay a wound. Because we're going to keep having those wounds. As long as there are parts within us where the light doesn't shine, the universe is going to keep cracking us open there. And so the question becomes, okay, what is it that I need to do so that the light can shine fully? So I don't have to keep getting cracked open in that spot.